It started. So thank you so much, Frank, for coming back on this podcast. And also, as we were just discussing, I'm experimenting with the video format. And thank you so much for being the guinea pig on my start of the video series. Not sure how this will go, but I trust that the content wise we will go somewhere. And if everything fails, the audio fails, the video fails, I at least have the conversation with you and I can write an article, publish it, that this is what I spoke to Frank about. So the knowledge is never lost.
That's totally fine. Let's try it out. This is exactly what Agile is, going into the cold water, find out our ways, and be flexible about it.
Yes, I agree. Before we go into the topics of interest,
Yes,
I
we
would
are.
love to hear a little bit about, I think we spoke almost a year ago, I think,
Yes.
right? What's happening with your life? How's things going on in the work that you are doing generally?
Mhm.
Anything particular, anything that you picked up, anything that you learned in the last year, which would be very interesting to share with us?
Oh, I think the last year definitely was still in the curse of the pandemic, right? So a lot of impact here, especially on the people. Um, so it's not new anymore. That's
Mm,
okay. But you will see long-term problems arising, right? So you can cover up stuff in very fast
mm,
and just cover it. But the longer a situation stays, the longer, the more fragile this fabric is, and problems reoccur, or you will see that the cover isn't working anymore. So,
mm,
namely, if it comes to remote working, right? So, I've seen teams who are really try to really be strong in keeping their social bonding
mm,
alive, and they totally overdid it by being too much on the laptop, too much online, never canceling like meetings or something like that with their team. So they not really burned out, but it was really they were exhausted after a long time, right? So they had to cut down. Other teams, especially when there are new people coming in, of course, have the problem how to onboard new hires, right? In this kind of a setup, bonding is extremely hard.
mm.
So if you have new hires, um, they can't bond anymore, right? So I'm just talking with you over my Mac or my laptop, and um, the social interaction that you have when you meet in the morning, drink a coffee together, and say, "Hey, how was your night? Everything fine? Yeah, let's get to work." Or I need a break. Let's go ahead and get a tea or something like that. So all these small interactions aren't there anymore.
Mm,
Or if the guy over there is just working and listening to a silly music, that what you normally hear, right, when you're working um, in a room together. So that all these kind of small things you don't get anymore. So that's very, very hard. That also, of course, if you don't bond with the company,
mm,
and you part easily,
mm,
right? So there is definitely some kind of a turnover on people leaving, that you can see is more than the normal times. So this like remote setup working, bonding teams and not bonding teams, so that definitely got worse, or
mm,
the effects shown were more visible, but also especially a big focus for the last more than half a year was for us the OKR process. So how to really set goals for our company. Um, so at the very start, 1.5 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, darn, long time, we had this situation where we said, okay, we have to, from one month to the next, get the entire process online. And it worked, but it was quite top-down heavy. So normally you have OKRs, there is a guidance from above, and there is some kind of root initiative, so a bottom-up initiatives, so how the teams can pay into these goals set by the management. And so we saw after a time that our system was very, very top-down heavy, and the teams didn't align in a natural way online as we had it before. And so we had to change the process, but that's normal, right? So when you have a business
Absolutely.
process, an organizational process, it is living, and it shouldn't be strict and by the book, because
Right.
a company is a living entity. It has its culture, it has its people working in it, and something by the book will always be too rigid.
True.
So you have to adapt it. And we got a really great colleague coming into our team who took ownership of this process. There was none before, so it is very good. Processes need some kind of an ownership indeed. And then we saw that we really turned the ship around, and it also took some iterations. And well, you know how it is. You're never at the very, you're never at the end. So there is always something that you can improve, where you have to make something better. The coolest thing is always when you change something, and or when there is a process going on, at first, especially with goal setting, you make transparent that there is a problem. The process can only, if it's a good process, can only surface the problems.
Right.
And then you have to deal with those problems, get rid of them so that the process will work. So the process doesn't cure it, it can surface the problem. And what I normally see is, oh, the process doesn't work, the process is shitty, we have to do another methodology or something else. So it's just changing everything around, and hey, let's head from. So normally you have that with development teams, right?
Right.
Scrum doesn't work, let's head to Kanban. Kanban doesn't work, let's go to whatever. So these kind of things, but the problems that they have, the behavior that they have, that display, that are the reasons, the core root problems that any methodology will fail, any process will fail. So it's these small things that you need to understand and solve before you go to a process or adapt a process that is should be beneficial. Okay, good. So a lot of going through one-on-ones and teams to make them bond, to make them work again, and the organizational process with OKRs. That was my two big learnings last year. And we ramped up from being 2 agile coaches now to being 4 agile coaches. So now we are a team again. And that is really something that I love, because I like to work with people. I like to connect and see, get the riches from the others, and also share with my experience, right? So it's always a give and take. And if you are more people, there is more to learn.
Absolutely. No, I really liked how you mentioned like good processes surfaces problem. I just made a note of it because yes, that single line we can spend hours talking about it,
I
but we
guess.
will, and we will get into that. And I also liked, I think, the part around remote work and how I think for I resonate with a lot of points that you shared. I think it also becomes a little transactional in nature on how we converse and interact online, especially if you're in a larger group and you're doing a remote call. My perception, whether I'm doing it right or wrong, at least what I picked up is sometimes it definitely definitely it's a learn when you had to move from a physical environment, thinking about having a brainstorming, having a conversation, thinking about a topic, preparing as a group,
Mhm.
and you take it online, you are obviously leveling up on other different things, making sure that you're hearing the right people. Is everybody getting a chance to talk about it? And obviously sometimes you need to overdo the structure so that it doesn't
Mhm.
become like very weird, because it's very hard to do like I call synchronization on an online call. Like, when
Mhm.
do I know it's the right time to speak, or when do I know I can wait, I need to listen to this point? It's hard to get those cues in a virtual environment. And I think there are people and organizations that may be having more experience in doing it and doing it in a really interesting way, which we can all learn from. But I think the hardest hit are companies and teams and organizations and groups of people who were not really remote native from the
Yeah.
beginning. And now they're slowly transitioning to this purely remote environment. It's a struggle. It's a process. It takes time. And I purely resonated with all the observations that you had as well.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Um, so everything that is remote meetings, right? So I think we both worked, yeah, and worked at Zalando, and I always had a big pain when we were talking with the remote teams, right?
Yeah.
So it was also here at Mister Spex the way, um, when so that normally when you have a team abroad or in another city or something like that, one team sits in a room, another team sits another room, right? And
Mm.
there is kind of a big display and a spider that just just if you're good, it's a spider. Then and the people in the other in the other location just see half of the room because the camera is tilted or something
Yeah.
like that. They never see the whiteboard. They also just hear the coffee pot with the spoon that's right next to the spider, right? So it's a
Right.
total mess. And for me, the big game changer was that everybody had the same devices. So
Mm.
everybody had their laptops, their headsets, okay, or some kind of a device, let's put it like that.
Yeah.
um, and so they all had the same terms. And suddenly, um, at least the rich possibility of having the same visuals, having the same um, ground setup really did the trick.
Mhm.
But as you said, there need to be rules.
Right.
But if you have too many rules, it's like, okay, now you, now you, now you. It's a, uh,
Yeah.
and again, too much, too much structured. But I like it. There are in most of these lovely tools that we have, there's the possibility to raise a hand in a digital format, um, so that you can give the voice over to another person, or some brainstorming solutions out there like digital white walls
Mm.
are really worth investing in. So
Right.
there are very nice tools out there, like Miro, that we are using very heavily right now, and which is amazing to play with. I started with the Google Jam stuff, but
Yeah.
it did its tricks, but it's very much limited. But for a
Yeah.
fast whiteboard to structure ideas, it was enough, and that's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
So a good digital setup in toolings, in having a good laptop, having a good
Mm.
camera, uh, really a good microphone and headphones, right? So not just the normal headsets that you have with your mobile phone. That really changes a lot. Then, of course, the tools like a good communication platform, you just name it, is essential really for having a good structure. And what I saw, it's also, that's the same like in a live environment when you are close to each other in a room. It is good to have one person who just takes care that it's being done, right?
Right.
So some kind of a moderator who has a plan how to run something, at least when it is an open format that should be where the outcome is more than just reporting. If you
Right.
just have a reporting meeting, you can do it by email, but
Absolutely.
you don't need that. But it's frighteningly often the case that you have reporting meetings. Why? Even a
Right.
daily is a reporting meeting for most. I'm just wondering why the heck I have everything in Jira. Why should I tell you what I've done? It's about,
Right.
okay, just look there. It's what did I learn and what am I going to do today? What's my plan?
Mm,
Where do I need help?
exactly.
These are the things that should do in a daily, and not, this is what I've done. Uh, mm, why didn't you do much more? I couldn't. So that's a bad feeling.
Yeah.
But yeah, so having somebody taking care of the structure, um, being prepared for a meeting,
Mm,
that is important. You know, um, in these remote times, it is so much easier to rush from one meeting to the next because it's just a fingertip away. Okay, the problem is that you don't have time for bio breaks, okay?
right.
But it's also that you don't have any time to prepare.
Right.
So what I try to do whenever I set up a meeting is there's this lovely possibility to set up only 50 minutes
Right.
meetings, right? Because what you didn't manage in 50 minutes, you wouldn't manage in 60 minutes as well. So that there is no difference.
I agree.
And you can set it up 5 minutes past and 5 minutes before, right? So that you have always like 5 minutes at least to the next one, who of course doesn't do these kind of meetings, but just for the entire hour. But it
Right.
gives me the possibility to have 5 minutes, yes, also for a bio break, for a tea, or
Yeah.
really, okay, what's the next meeting up? That's the topic. Okay, what is my word on it? What do I have to say there? Why am I needed in this meeting?
Right.
And so on. So um, that really is helpful to prepare up front,
Right.
and use the 5 minutes that you have to already dig into it. Um, oh, I'm always talking, sorry.
No, I love to hear that. And I think this kind of creates that feeling that now that we're all starting to get like mostly remote, I
Mm,
think the emphasis of being prepared, emphasis of being more control on the time
mhm.
in your meetings that you are, more being aware of time to prepare, time to break. I think this is becoming more important. I think in a physical environment,
Mhm.
the whole act of going from one meeting room to
Mhm.
another meeting room, that itself is amazing because I had experience where I meet different people as I walk through that one meeting to other room and we break into other talk, and it's great. But also it creates movement. You're physically
Yeah,
transitioning,
yeah,
and this whole physical transitioning is also almost like a mental reset as you go in another conversation.
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of missing. And uh, on the long run, of course, so looking uh, out of the meeting context, it's also moving to work and from work again, right? So
Right.
cutting up the work and slowly transitioning to your private life, that is
Right.
also missing.
Right.
Um, so yes, exactly. That exactly is the point. I love
Okay.
that.
So
Well
now
said.
I think this is where perhaps we started talking about topics. And I think one thing to make it like less dramatic as
Yeah.
possible, um, if someone comes to you, Frank,
Mhm.
and says, okay, you know what, I have read about this, but I'm still not clear. When do we say we have or we are playing a role of a scrum master?
Mhm.
And when do we say we are playing a role of an agile coach? What is different? How do you interpret these two roles? And what do you say to this person?
Good question. Is there a difference? I would say yes. So Scrum Master is coming from Scrum, right? So it is a role in one methodology. Um, and this role is taking care of a team, to remove impediments, to help them improve, taking care of the process Scrum. Okay, that's a simplification, but this is what a Scrum
Yeah,
Master is doing, right?
yeah,
So at Zalando, we said, okay, we don't want to limit ourselves to Scrum. This is why we said it's a producer,
right,
whatever you're coming up with a name, right?
right.
So what I would like to say and make it a little bit broader is, um, a Scrum Master is taking care of one or two teams, that they work, that our impediments are um, removed, that there is that they can easily collaborate together, and of course to deliver value in a good and fast, sustainable pace. The fun thing is, Scrum doesn't say that there is a team lead.
Hmm.
And the Scrum Master is very, very, very closely um, connected to leadership functionality. But it would be very bad if he would be hierarchically really a lead in a team, because then there isn't this openness anymore.
Hmm.
So what I really much like is when the Scrum Master is not part of the same hierarchy in the team. So if you report to the same team lead of the team that you are working with, there will always be friction, because you take care of parts of the leadership of the team lead. So this is something that you need to take care of when you set up an environment with Scrum Masters.
Right.
But again, Scrum Master for me is an agile coach who is taking care mostly of teams. So his expertise lies uh, in setting up a safe environment, psychological safety, in one or two methodologies, and so on. So this would be my Scrum Master. A little
Hmm.
bit more experienced than the role that we have in Scrum, um, but that's it. Now, a work of an agile coach, as I see it, is more broader. So when you see that these boundaries of a team doesn't fit anymore, and you gain more experience, or you want to gain more experience, um, there are different ways to concentrate, to focus on. One thing is definitely, like everything, like let's call it career coaching, right? So personal coaching, when you go to with team members, hey, this was not so good, and this is how you can make it better, and what is limiting you, maybe even to the point, okay, what motivates you, what do you aspire, How should be your work here? How can we make your work transition into what you want, and so on? So that's already some kind of a leadership work again, right? But this career coaching can be very, very beneficial for teams, in teams. You can extend it, of course, to leaders, which is a little bit different. Executives is even harder career coaching here, right? So you need a lot of experience and to know the difference of how to address them and what is really needed and at a higher level of hierarchy. So this is what I would call career coaching. So this is one area that you could focus on. And this is not done by a Scrum Master. It can't be. If even the setup should be outside. When you're doing career coaching, you're mostly set up in an area of HR,
Right.
people and services, something like that. You can also, of course, be inside in a department, but normally the department in itself doesn't invest in this. So that's a company wish that people should be career coached, right?
Right.
Okay, that's something you can step in, you can grow in when you see that you like to work with the individuals in a team. That's one path that leads out of the Scrum Master role. By the way, this is exactly what I did with moving to a people lead, right? So from team to people lead.
Right.
Funny, huh? Okay. Then there is another way. If you see that you have one team, I've had producers in my time, or I've seen Scrum Masters as well, who had like 3, 4, 5 teams,
Right.
right? Whoa. For me, this is, a good Scrum Master can have 2, 3 teams. The best Scrum Master just has one, right? Focusing on it gets really deeper into the processes in helping the team. So here, the more teams you have, the more you only scratch at the surfaces.
Right.
Building trust in teams where you just dip in is
Right.
really hard. And the more crucial that you're not reporting to a team lead here.
Right.
You can work with them, that's good, but you can't report to them because that's nuts.
Right.
So when you have more teams, you slowly go into a direction where you see that a team is set up in a department with several teams, right? So it's a network of teams that should work together into one direction of a business unit.
Right.
Of course, we have there are companies set up in a way where it's really where it's already like product-led organizations, where you say, okay, all teams here are already available, working together towards one goal. But you also have still companies which have silos, which marketing, tech, whatever, and there is like this silo throwing work over, and you have to accept it, and so on. So you will slowly see that an organization has to have a different structure. The business unit has to have a different structure, organizational structure, processes to work together in a better way, to come up with goals for themselves, to organize better, more frictionless, more efficient, effective. And if you cross this boundary in helping setting up a business unit, a huge area of teams together, then you also transitioned into an organizational coach or business
Right.
coach, something like that, right? So that's how how can several teams work better together
Right.
with other stakeholders or whatsoever. So this is something that I wouldn't expect of a Scrum Master.
Right.
And there's one more focus area, sorry,
No,
of an
that's
agile
great.
coach.
Please
With
continue.
what I see, it's when you see, okay, there are roles, especially in software development, we have different roles, right? We have the developers, the engineers, we have the product heroes, we have the leaders, of course. Maybe we have also some data scientists in there. We have business developers, right? So they are specialists.
Mm.
And when you have knowledge of one of these areas and coming into normal way of how this kind of transition is. So I was product owner, I became a Scrum Master,
Mm.
then I became Agile coach with the knowledge of the product ownership, the
Mm.
product, how product can be led, how to build up a vision, and so on. So this knowledge, I didn't lose it, right? So
Right.
I'm using it. So I still help my product owners to see how can I write user stories. And that's part of agile coaching as well. It's part of
Right.
all of these methodologies, how to cut the stories right from a product perspective, how to set up a user map or whatever. So these are all agile methods or tools that you can use, and they are very much product heavy. So I try also to be a specialist in a role, how and can train them. Some can train me, of course. Um, most of them, most probably. Um, but well, I know what to say, so that's at least something. Um, but as I definitely have seen a lot of product owners working with teams so that I know what is working and what is not working.
Mm.
And I had the pleasure with working with so many awesome product owners so that I could learn from them while they were working with their teams, while I was supporting them, right? So
Right.
that's always the greatest opportunity to see things working and understand how they're being done and so on. Um, so and a colleague of mine was a developer, so he had his speciality of how to code in a good way. So
Mm.
he was the agile coach for us when it came to enabling um, extreme programming in teams, right? So Holger was there, and he ran the coolest sessions on coding
Mm.
in a workshop. And so this focus on roles, on special focus areas of yeah, yes, let's call it just role.
Right.
So that really is a different path of an agile coach, right? So you see a lot of consultants and coaches who try to help product owners get better, developers get better,
Mm.
scientists get more agile or whatever. So there's this speciality on what you're doing, right? So these three big areas I see, and they all come from the team.
Mm.
So this is the entry path to whatever comes up there, because the team, and that's the loveliest thing. in IT that we have, you can't build work alone. So
Right.
you really need the help of all of your colleagues to get something on the road that is really lovely and giving value to our customers. So you have to work together. And having this one person who just takes care of this,
Mm.
which is very funny, but this is already paying the improvement that you have by enabling one team, by each of these people by 25% pays
Right.
the wages of this one person.
Right.
So that's tremendous. Um, so when you come and ask me now, what do I need? A Scrum Master or an Agile coach? Then I ask you, what do you need? Where is your pain, right?
Right.
And what is your vision of this person? Do you want just somebody who takes care of one team or two teams?
Mm.
Yeah, you could hire a Scrum Master. Is that already beneficial for you? Because just hiring a person without having an understanding on, okay, you want to grow this person, right? So what
Mm.
are if you hire just somebody who is totally alien to your current setup, you have to think about how to grow. What's the next step? Latest in 2 years. Ah, come on, in 1 year time, this person will say, "Hey, I'm bored. I just have one team or two
Yeah.
teams, and it's the same. What should I do in the next years? I want to grow. I want to do something more."
Mm.
And then you need to give him something, right? And it would be worse if you only then think about the next steps, right? So, do you want a team of people who want to who are sufficiently skilled and set up maybe most hopefully in a very cross-functional way? So you have
Mm.
one who's taking more of teams, one more with the psychological safety, with more psychology background, even one more on the business side with like product background, or
Mm.
one even for with more executive knowledge and uh, the the knowledge on how to get high level goal setting in an organization. Then you are set up in a very cross-functional way where you can jump in wherever you're needed.
Right.
And this, so if I don't know the pain, I would consult in a wrong way.
Right. Fantastic. Now, this is really useful. I think what you ended your answer was just thinking about the problem. And I really liked, don't just think about just right now, think about long term, what this person is developing into, think about the future before just bringing anyone in that role and just putting them in the deep waters. I really enjoyed that answer, and I think this is a really that has a lot of good elements to it. Because we are kind of pressed on time, and I want
Yeah,
to be
sure.
respectful of your time as well. I
Fine.
just want to end with one other question, and maybe we need more conversations. And if you are available, we can do that.
Mhm.
Like, do you also see for these roles of Scrum Masters or Agile
Mhm.
coaches or even organizational coaches,
Yeah.
do you also see a shelf life? As in, when does a team is mature enough to say
Mhm.
they can organize and being able to apply the Scrum methodology or whatever
Mhm.
methodology they are adopting in a way where they're not dependent upon one individual? Is that even a possibility?
I like that question. So I thought, hey, um, my team at Zalando, my lovely back-end order team, it was working perfectly. So I really had a lot of trust in them, that they were set up in a great way. And I said, okay, I can leave them alone just half a year later, everything was different. So the team gets wild on its own. So whenever there is pressure coming up, whenever there is a new product coming in, whenever there is a new feature or new stakeholders, you have to have somebody who takes care that the team can still survive in this area. So normally, what I see is when you have a mature team, it is just sufficient to dip in every now and then, to still guide them and still give them the pulse in the right direction whenever they need it. Just one thing. Sorry, I have to say this. An agile coach, everything that we are doing is still leadership work. So if a leader doesn't take care of his team, of his team's processes, then you need an agile coach.
Right.
But you know how it is. Leaders have to do suddenly some different things, right? Like project management, like coding themselves. And then they don't have the time that they normally need to get their teams going. If they have mature teams, again, they just need to have the pulse and give them an input. Hey, this is how it's going this way, please. Or hey, you should better focus in the daily on this and this, or something like that. Did you do your retrospectives, teams? All of this, right? So if you just give them an impulse, it's working. So I really don't think if we don't enable our leaders and give them the time for doing so, and believe me, leaders don't learn on osmosis. So they need to be taught as well. They need to be trained. They need to be given the freedom and the understanding that processes evolve, that teams evolve and change with each new hire. The face of the team slowly changes.
Right.
So you have to adapt. Times change. Ways of working change as well. So you can't stick to something that worked 5 years ago.
Right.
It simply, we are not in this environment anymore.
Right.
So yes, you can live without agile coaches, but it pains.
No, I really like the term about, leaders don't learn from osmosis. I think you have really good, interesting one-liners that I could just use as a statement. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I really like the emphasis on giving, I think, impulse. Also, it means that coming in and really reinvigorating the whole spirit of that work by asking the right questions, by channelizing the energy in the team, making sure that you can do an intervention if needed, if things are not going in right direction.
Indeed. And just one more thing, I think I scrap this every now and then. For me, it's very crucial how this agile coaching role is reporting to. The more impact you design for this role, the higher up this agile coach has to report to.
Yeah.
So I'm really fortunate in being able to report to the CTO of my organization, who was an agile coach and a tech nerd. So he's amazing, and having somebody who understands me is even better. But the hierarchy part is unfortunately always important.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of initiatives that say, okay, in more traditional like banks or something like that, right? So you have an initiative where some tech teams have to find their own way in organizing themselves, but the rest of the organization stays the same.
Mm.
And so they create a little bubble. So that's very often the case. And there's like a project lead or initiative lead, and to this person, the agile coaches report, but they are stuck in this bubble. But
Mm.
the entire company is not that bubble.
Yeah.
So whenever this lead disappears or the bubble bursts, everything will fail. It's just bound to fail. So if you want a sustainable change management, a restructuring of your organization that really has something more long term to it, then please take care that your agile coach has the power and the outstanding of the normal hierarchies so that he
Mm.
can influence leaders, heads, business unit leaders, or something like that. So keep them outside as far as possible and still influential with the high leadership so that there is a possibility to really shape the organization. That is for those who ask for a Scrum Master, have a future for the poor guys you're hiring. Have a vision
Mm.
and set it up in a way so that the full potential of this lovely species called Agile Coach can really get the full influence that they
Mm.
are able to give to your organization. I'm done.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Frank. And I really appreciate you taking the time. As usual, I think there are so many interesting gems that you shared, and we can spend more time on each of these and basically create another set of podcasts that we can publish. And I will obviously hunt for that and will ask for more time whenever you have. But I appreciate the time you gave me today, and thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for your interest. And let's see what kind of a feedback you get from this
Sure.
lovely podcast, video cast, and whatever
Yeah,
it ends up with. And let's have another chat. I'd like to hear more of the feedback that you get. Thank you so much for
absolutely.
this opportunity, Vivek.
Thank you.